Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today's guest is someone who has spent a decade working across international borders, helping companies scale smarter and faster. With deep experience in connecting businesses in the United States to talent in Latin America, Brian Samson has worked to help hundreds of organizations expand their teams while navigating global hiring. So we're going to be talking to Brian about everything that he's doing to help these organizations and everything that he's up to and going to be up to. So Brian, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I have been in the nearshore game for going on 11 years. And what that really means is connecting talent from Latin America to U.S. companies. Work with a lot of small and medium-sized companies. And, Latin America is interesting because for a long time we have really looked to India, the Philippines, China, as where we want to send work to. China's been the manufacturing place. Philippines is really call center focused and virtual assistants, and India's been IT. But there's a trade-off there, with time zone. And that big ocean in the middle means somebody's sleeping and somebody's working. But Latin America's been there all along, and it's the same time zone as the U.S., and there's a ton of really great talent. So I've spent my last 11 years building companies that provide that service, connecting people in the same time zone that are really high quality and critical thinkers, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Well, for listeners who might not be aware, explain what nearshoring is and how is it different from outsourcing or offshore?
Yeah, so offshoring, you've got a big ocean in between you, right? So that means that nobody's on the same time zone. Now, the reason why you might offshore is the cost savings are tremendous. But the drawback to offshoring is you're either working different hours than somebody. So that means that when they finish, they send you an email and then you're just waking up. So if they didn't quite exactly get the specs or understand what you're looking for, you kind of lose that whole day, and you wait for them to wake up again. And there's really very little collaboration that can happen. With nearshoring, it's the same time zone. So you can collaborate all day long. If you're, let's say, in Ohio and your team is in Mexico, you're basically in the exact same time zone. So you get 8 hours of work together. And in the day and age of remote work, why not? So you get a little bit of a cost savings, not as dramatic as Asia, but you also get to have that full workday overlap. And that's why people tend to want to do nearshoring.
Well, I know you've spent 10 years working between the U.S. and Latin America. So talk about what first drew you to this space and what opportunities did you see early on?
Yeah, so I did it. I was a founder of a company that was in the fintech world, which is, building like the next generation of banking apps and startups. And I ended up living in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And if you've never been there, that's okay. Not many people have. But it's a country with 40 million people. Buenos Aires is a mega city with about 14 million in the whole greater region. And it's everything, like just on steroids. So you've got beautiful tree-lined streets, cafes. If you like steak, there's no better place for steak. wine, croissants. It's very European, a lot of Parisian style architecture. Um, but then at the same time, you've got high inflation, sometimes hyperinflation. You've got really challenging obstacles to do business and high taxes, very pro labor versus pro business. So you got challenges there too. But what is really exciting is how great the talent is. They're very used to working with the US. Although Spanish is their first language, you'd be surprised at how Americanized their English is. And they, because of the climate that they're in, it's a tough place to live. They know that the biggest way to increase their salary is to speak perfect US style English. So there's a major motivator there. And, I went there to build a software company, but I've stayed because the, um, the creativity, the work ethic, the problem solving, the English, it's just all incredible. And I'm continuing to invest there and double down, and now all over Latin America, not just Argentina. Mexico has been a great place for us. Colombia, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Brazil, Peru. Each of these countries is special in their own way, but the region as a whole is just a treasure trove of great talent and a very little sacrifice. Don't have to sacrifice time zone. Don't have to sacrifice quality. You get problem solvers. They're used to AI tools. All this. Just a lot of great things going for it.
Well, what roles are companies most commonly filling using nearshoring? Because I know your company has made more than 500 placements with Latin professionals in U.S. companies.
Yeah, good question. So IT is often the most mature thing that gets offshore to nearshore first. So India has been doing IT, since the 1980s, 1990s, the dot com boom. So it's super mature. Latin America, really, for about 20, 25 years. So that's often the first positions because they're the most commonly organized. And that's the same for us. About 90% of our roles are IT adjacent. So software developers, QA, Salesforce leads, things like that. But we can also do call center. We built a call center in Nicaragua. We can do virtual assistants, executive assistants, marketing and content people, payroll and billing. Basically, anything that's kind of like a white collar role, we'll do from Latin America.
We'll talk about some of the biggest myths or misconceptions business owners have about hiring talent from Latin America.
Yeah, I think, America, United States, it's a big place. So that means people can be really well traveled within the states. Um, and we've got everything here. We've got Hawaii, a tropical island. We've got Alaska, with glaciers. We've got the Grand Canyon. We've got Florida with Everglades. We've got New York City. So America's got a lot to see. So that means only 25% of Americans have passports. And many of them who've been to Latin America have gone to like resorts in Cancun or a cruise ship. And hey, I've done all those things and I had a great time doing it. But that means, we don't really know what's going on outside of what the newspaper tells us or maybe like a Netflix show. So, think about like Narcos, on all these cartel shows on Netflix, or you hear about this kidnapping of Maduro, the leader of Venezuela, or the wild inflation going on, and you just kind of leave it at that. Um, so the misconception, or I guess the myth, is that all these countries are just kind of chaos, so the people must be chaos. But I want you to look one level deeper, that just because the country is chaotic, the people there are used to the chaos. So that means that they can, nothing you throw at them will really phase them. They're very calm, they're very adaptable, very flexible. A lot of stuff just kind of rolls off their back. It's no big deal. All the things that stress us out as business owners, no big deal for people in Latin America. And we face problems all day. So do they. So they're really used to it. So I think that's the biggest misconception, is just, what I read in the newspaper applies to the millions and millions of people, in that continent. But they're really the byproduct of the chaos, which has turned them into battle hardened problem solvers.
Well, from a business perspective, what are some of the advantages companies gain when they embrace nearshoring?
Yeah, the surface level stuff is going to be time zone and cost. But, one level deeper, you get that creativity, the problem solving ability, and the US style English.
Talk about some of the challenges or mistakes companies make when they first start hiring internationally.
Yeah, I think what companies tend to do is they have like an us versus them mentality. Like us here in the States and them as those foreign, low cost resources that we hired somewhere else. But there's very little gap, between talent in the States and talent in Latin America. And people are really surprised, when they uncover that. So the more you just run them through your same hiring process, you don't have to do anything special. The same way, if you're in New York and you hire somebody in Ohio, the same interview process you do for that person is the same interview process you should do for the person in Mexico, the same onboarding you should do, and just treat them like a real person. And it's amazing what you'll get out of it. But the mistakes usually happen is when you treat them wildly different, because they don't need to be treated differently.
Where you've had the privilege of building three companies from 0 to 4 million in annual revenue. So, what are some of the lessons you learned from entrepreneurs when it comes to building and scaling companies across international borders?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say this applies to international. I think this applies to anything. Is remember, you kind of have the superpower when you're a founder of a company, in that clients and prospects love talking to the founder because they know no one's going to care more than you, and they'll give you a lot more grace. And you also really need to know how to sell before you hire salespeople. So that's something I would really really lean in. And maybe the other advice is, don't be distracted by activity that isn't really important. I mean, if you wanted to, you could spend 2 weeks trying to research if you should be an S corp or a C corp, or incorporate in Wyoming or Nevada or Delaware or wherever. Or should you have an about us section on your website or not? Just get a customer. Don't get distracted by all these other things, because there will always be a million distractions. Just kind of focus on learning how to sell, and focus on things that will help you get and keep customers.
Well, for a business owner listening today who is curious about nearshoring but not sure where to start, what is the first step or the most important advice you would give them?
Yeah, we have our own podcast. It's called Nearshore Cafe, and we've got over 80 episodes on there now of people just like our listeners that maybe were curious and they dip their toe and they tell their stories about it. You know, how they hired a virtual assistant from Mexico, or how they hired a bunch of software engineers in Argentina or Brazil, and like the steps they took, the lessons they learned, the challenges they had. You know, we try to keep it real. So I think the podcast is a good start to get educated. And then they can also go to our website, plugg.tech, TECH. And we've got all sorts of country guides and collateral. And we can also schedule a call where they can talk directly to me and make sure they get all their questions answered.
We're looking forward in the next 5 to 10 years. How do you see nearshoring and global hiring evolving?
Yeah, I think AI is part of nearshoring, and we forget sometimes that globally people have access to these same tools that we do. So you know, you get kind of the extra arbitrage opportunity if you pair. Uh, if you look at the world as a opportunity for talent, and you also pair them with AI, it's a real force to be reckoned with.
Well, tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, we're always onboarding new customers and doing a lot of exciting stuff. So we are always excited to talk about that specifically with our prospects.
Throw out that website again so people can keep up with everything that you're up to.
That's plugg.tech, TECH.
All right. We'll close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listener.
No, I appreciate all your questions, Curtis. This is a lot of fun, and I just encourage people to, you know, all you got to do is look at this continent right below us on the map, and there's a lot of really exciting things happening down there. A lot of really great people, and it's going to accelerate your business by opening up your eyes and your mind.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you know of any business owners out there looking at nearshoring, or if they've never considered it, please be sure to follow, rate, review, and share this episode to as many people as possible. Also, check out Brian's website and podcast, plugg.tech. And also go to www.curveball337.com. If you haven't done so, sign up for that newsletter, leave us a review, follow the show, share the website and the show to everybody you know. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Brian, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.